Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Social Discharge podcast. Joining me today is Aarlon.
Hello.
And we are doing and I'm Coco. And we are doing a special segment or series where we're going to be covering the latest Dragon Ball anime, Dragon Ball Daima. And if you're wondering why we're starting it now instead of when the sub first came out, it's because I wanted to cover it watching the dub, because this show marks the return of one of my favorite voice actresses, Stephanie Udoli, returning to reprise her role as Kid Goku. Thank God.
And for some reason, the dub came out like months after the sub.
Yeah, that's
really cool, guys.
I was about to get into that, and that's another reason why it took a while for us to get started on this, is because the dub took fucking forever to come out. And if you follow me on Twitter, you've probably seen me get a little bit unhinged, posting pictures of Goku Mini holding a gun and me adding Funimation, Crunchyroll and Netflix and Hulu, because those are the companies that are streaming it, to hurry the fuck up and put out the fucking dub. But it's finally here, although unfortunately, much to the chagrin of the entire Dragon Ball fan base that watches Dragon Ball dubbed, they did not, in fact, release all the episodes up to where the sub is. The dub is coming out weekly. The sub, I think now, is like 16 episodes in, and I believe the series as a whole is like 20 episodes. So the sub will actually be done like pretty soon. So here's hoping that there will still be enough interest in Dragon Ball Daima after the sub is over for people to come over and watch this podcast.
Wasn't it an issue that like no one was talking about the sub though because it's the sub?
I mean, there were like some people talking about it because so the thing is, Dragon Ball is like one of the few shows that people actually prefer to watch the dub over the sub, because it came to the West at a time when dubs were like still it was one of the earliest shows to ever get dubbed in the first place. But on top of that, this was like before like the sub elitism really started. So like,
yeah, it's because it was before dubs sucked.
Yeah. Well,
Lol.
it's debatable, because most people would tell you that the original broadcast dub kind of sucks balls, but I mean, I prefer to watch the remaster of it in any case. Not so much a fan of the Kai dub. It unironically hurts my ears and makes me feel uneasy because everyone talks so fast in it.
Oh, but by the way, before I forget, just in my own personal experience, no one gives a shit about Daima, at least when the sub was running, because we talked about it on the seasonal cast. And that portion of it got like no views. Like everyone skipped over it.
God damn. People skipped over it. It's not just that people didn't like. People were like, "Oh, they're talking about." Isn't it the first segment of the episode too? Jesus.
Yes, it's the first segment, and the viewership like drops off a cliff, and everyone skipped to Ghoul School because the people wanted Ghoul School.
Yeah, honestly, if I were to say, I think the only people that really care about Daima right now are probably just Dragon Ball fans. And to be honest, Dragon Ball has actually kind of been in that state for a while now anyway. Like, I don't think it's as popular as it used to be. The show that's in that position now is clearly One Piece.
Yeah.
Like, One Piece is the thing that gets watched by people, even people who aren't, like, dedicated fans. Like, when Fan Letter came out, there are people who, as far as I'm aware, aren't, like, necessarily One Piece fans, but they still watched that. And that's, like, a 20-minute, like, OVA. So,
and it was deserved. Because that was a banger.
Yeah, the only people I see talk about Daima are Dragon Ball fans, basically. Same with the Dragon Ball Super manga, when that was going. Who knows if that shit's ever actually coming back. Hopefully it does. But in any case, we talked about the first 3 episodes on there, but I figured...
You talked about, like, the first 5 episodes. Yeah. I had only seen, like, the first 2. So this was new content for me watching these first 3 dubs.
I guess I kind of mentioned this in the seasonal podcast, but Dragon Ball Daima is kind of like sort of like a remake, in massive air quotes, because story-wise it's nothing like it at all. A remake of Dragon Ball GT, kind of. In that both of them center around Goku, who is now fully grown, being turned into a kid. That's pretty much where there's similarities. And I mean, I guess both of them are like space adventures, kinda, because like in Dragon Ball GT they actually go to space. In Dragon Ball Daima they go to like the demon realm, and they go there via spaceship. So it's kind of like a space adventure. Both of them are made to sort of like take Dragon Ball back to like its adventure roots, because ever since I'd probably say the Android Saga, the adventure aspect of Dragon Ball hasn't really been like a thing at all anymore. I say the Android Saga because the Namekian Saga was like kind of an adventure. I mean, they went to space, even though
Yeah.
there wasn't really like that much of a focus on like the fact that they were on Namek. It was just
Well,
like,
there was that filler arc where they stopped by that one planet.
oh yeah, there was a few filler arcs. There was one where they like stopped on like fake Namek or some shit,
Yeah,
and then there's like one
it
where
was
they like
terrible. It was really bad.
yeah. Then there's one where they like ended up on like a ship with like some ragtag band of like space, like I don't know, they're like freedom fighters or some shit. I don't know. But that's pretty much like where the adventure elements of Dragon Ball stopped. And I guess Toriyama, who did return to make this project, this was unfortunately the last project he worked on before he passed. Um,
No, you gotta say it all spicy like you did on the podcast. You gotta say something extremely tacky.
I can't remember what I said. Oh, I said something. He came back because he saw that people were shitting on Dragon Ball Super and were unironically making the claim that Dragon Ball GT is better. So he knew he was on the way out, and he was like, I cannot fucking die, leaving the impression that other people did Dragon Ball better than me. Because like one of the biggest selling points of Dragon Ball Super was that Toriyama was involved in it. Although the extent to which he was involved in it is like honestly kind of vague, to be honest. I think he was more
Yeah.
involved with the manga than he was with the anime.
I really think I gave this take on this seasonal. I think after seeing this show, it's increasingly clear that there's no shot he had that much involvement. Because in my opinion, Daima has the sauce, and
Well,
Super
I
does
think
not have the sauce.
the involvement he had in Super was that he made like a general outline of like what the arc would be about.
I
And
think he literally was like, do like an arc where like there's an evil Goku, and then they just worked off that. That's what I think
like
happened.
and then I think he was a bit more involved. He was definitely more involved with the manga because like in the manga he was doing like corrections on Toyotaro's art and stuff. So like
Yeah.
he was definitely like more involved there, and probably involved with the writing too. Which is why you'll have moments where it's like the same arc, but there's like different stuff going on, like fucking Master Roshi tapping into Ultra Instinct. What's that?
That was cool.
But it's also kind of funny because a lot of people overlook the fact that Toriyama was involved in Dragon Ball GT, and similar to Dragon Ball Super, it's pretty vague to what extent he was involved with that. But I'm gonna assume he wasn't involved in like plotting or anything. But I think he was involved on some level with character design and stuff like that. So it's like, is there really that much of a difference between Super and GT? Who knows? But this, on the other hand, Dragon Ball Daima, is a project he was actually fully involved in.
You can just
Um,
tell. You can just tell by watching it that like it feels like Dragon Ball,
yeah,
and the other ones don't really feel like that.
I mean, Super feels like a sort of like an escalation of like Dragon Ball Z, basically. And then Dragon Ball GT. Dragon Ball GT is kind of made, like I said before, it's made in the same spirit as Daima in that they're trying to make an adventure-focused story by going back and, you know, they have the Goku's turned into a kid, they're going into space, traveling across different planets. But the adventure part of that was considered like the weakest part of GT, and like the more action-oriented Z-esque portion, which is like the latter half of the series where they go back to Earth, is generally considered like the best part. So clearly the lack of Toriyama sauce, as you put it, probably is the reason why the adventure part of GT wasn't that great.
Oh, by the way, I have not read the Super manga, nor have I watched past the Goku Black arc. So if you like anything but anything outside of what I've consumed, I'm not commenting on that. I haven't consumed it, so don't get mad at me.
I haven't watched, when it comes to the anime, I haven't watched past the first tournament where it's like Universe 7 versus Universe 11, I think. And then like when it comes to the manga, I pretty much read all of it. I know
I
that
mostly
people.
just hate it for what it adds to the lore. I don't like the whole universes thing and Goku like being friends with God.
Then you might not like some of the things that I wrote down here, but we'll get to that. No, I would say that the manga probably is better, but the thing is, when it comes to the manga, I've only read it from the start once, and then every time after that, I just reread it from the original arcs onward. So like the Moro arc and the Granola arc. And I actually like the Moro arc, which is why I'm hoping that they do adapt that, but a part of me doubts that they will. But
Damn.
anyways, Toriyama definitely has had sort of like a burgeoning passion, you could say, to take Dragon Ball back to its adventure roots. Because a lot of the like projects he was working on before he came back to this were stuff like Sandland, which is like an adventure type story. But like obviously, since it's not Dragon Ball, I mean, people did check it out because
I didn't even know that Toriyama like did non-Dragon Ball stuff after Dragon Ball.
to be honest, I think Sandland might actually just be it, to be honest.
Ah,
But I mean, I'm not entirely sure. It's been a while since I last checked his profile on AniList, but I do know that Sandland was like the most prominent one.
have you read it? Is it good?
I don't know if there's a manga. There's a movie, and then I think they cut up the movie into a series, and it also has a video game. But no,
Interesting.
I have not seen it, but I can tell it's definitely like more adventure based. Random side note, but this anime takes place in the Demon Realm, where King Dabura is from, and one of the characters in Sandland is basically just King Dabura, like in terms of their design. I don't think it's actually Dabura himself, but like design wise, it's literally just him, which is kind of funny. So I'm guessing since Sandland wasn't like as popular as Dragon Ball, Toriyama was like, what if I took this passion I had for adventure stories and I like brought it back to Dragon Ball? And so we got Dragon Ball Daima, which I don't think it was like the anniversary of Dragon Ball or anything like that. I think they just felt like it. Is basically a series that's made as like one giant callback to like the OG series, which, in my opinion, is the best Dragon Ball series. Except for the fact that my attention span cannot handle it anymore.
Bruh. That is just sad. I
Yeah.
have kind of mixed feelings about Dragon Ball. I feel like I'd have to rewatch it, but I
Yeah,
think I prefer Z.
most people
They're
do.
their own things, though. They kind of have different appeals.
Yeah, I mean, like, Dragon Ball is basically if you haven't seen Dragon Ball but you've seen One Piece, like OG Dragon Ball is pretty much like imagine what One Piece was like, probably before Dressrosa, maybe. Is that a good place to say that's when Adventure Piece stopped? Dressrosa?
There's a little bit of adventure in Dressrosa,
Yeah,
but it became that was like the tipping point where it was like we are now fight piece more than adventure piece.
yeah.
We will now do 100 different battles that we switch between for 200 chapters.
We're now gonna do the Bleach thing.
Yeah, except
Yeah.
it's good when Bleach does it.
Sometimes.
Sometimes you're right. Sometimes.
Yeah.
I will say though that that did kind of turn me off of it originally. Like seeing all like the promo art and stuff, and that it's like, oh, they got turned into babies or whatever. I was like, this show is gonna be dog shit.
I
like
mean,
this is so like nostalgia pandering and stupid. It's gonna suck.
that was
And it did not.
that was the initial reaction to this. I
Yeah.
remember seeing people like filming themselves at cons when it was announced, being like, "What the fuck is this baby bullshit? I want Moro adapted." And stuff like that. And to be honest, there are still some people who are like, I want Moro adapted, and they kind of like gloat over the fact that Dragon Ball Daima, isn't like performing as greatly as people expected. Although
The worst kind of person.
it should be worth pointing out that this is another instance of Twitter not being the real world, because apparently Toei Animation like put out their numbers for this, and like Dragon Ball Daima just like went right to number one above One Piece, and it's like, what the fuck? So the people are clamoring for a Dragon Ball anime.
Well, I'm sure it's big in Japan.
I mean, I imagine
those numbers are here though.
I imagine that's all Toei tracks is Japan's numbers.
Yeah.
Uh,
No, I mean,
can't
it was
really,
always going to be big in Japan because
can't
they like
really,
Dragon Ball there.
yeah, can't really speak to its international success. That part is hard to say. Like, I have no idea if it's been given like when like a show is performing really well on Netflix, like the hit show, whatever tag. I don't know if it has that or anything. But I imagine if most people are watching this, they're watching it on Crunchyroll, which, by the way, is another thing I forgot to mention because we were talking about how the dub is taking forever to come out. The dub hasn't come out everywhere yet. The show still hasn't started airing in UK on the British version of Crunchyroll. It's only available in America and I'm assuming Canada, but it might not even be available there. So they're like really trying to like draw out Dragon Ball Daima's like lifespan. They're like,
They're really milking it.
yeah, they're like really trying, and I gotta say, it doesn't really seem to be working, because near as I can tell, everyone else is just watching the sub. I might be the only person in the universe watching the. Okay, that's obviously an exaggeration, but that's what it feels like, because everyone
Yeah.
else is just talking about the sub. So you know, so getting into the show proper, so this show um is an AU from Dragon Ball Super because, well, that's the assumption anyway. I've seen some people still try to argue that it might be canon to Super, which we'll get into a bit later.
I think that was the intention at the very least, but also
Mhm.
like Toriyama just doesn't give a shit about canon. Even in his
Yeah,
own like even in Dragon Ball he did that all the time. So
yeah.
I think that's just how he writes.
I mean, there's some people that say it might still be canon because I guess jumping the gun a bit, there's a scene where King Goma is like leaving to go to the mortal realm to go and get the Dragon Balls or whatever, and they ask what universe they're going to, and he says
Yeah.
Universe 7, which is what the universe is called in Dragon Ball Super.
Yeah, that actually like surprised me when that happened because I did not remember that.
Yeah, I didn't notice that in the sub. He does say Universe 7, and some people also mentioned this is probably from episodes I haven't seen yet because people posted like screen caps of like the gods from the other universes and like the Kais from other universes being shown in like silhouette form when they're like being talked about in the exposition scene. So at the very least, even if it's like an AU from Super, some of those like lore additions from Super are still canon in this universe. They just like don't matter to the plot.
I don't really mind the whole universes thing. I just don't. I
Like
don't like that
the
they.
planet-sized Dragon Balls.
I don't like the planet-sized Dragon Balls. I don't like that they're friends with God. I don't like that Beerus is like he just has to have like a certain destroy planets quota. So like actually like nothing that they do really matters, and it's just like protecting their own planet, but the same
Although
amount of death is happening.
we don't really see him do that and destroy planets once he becomes
But
friends with Goku.
it's implied that he still is.
Also, what's even weirder about that is that after the Tournament of Power, which is the last arc in the anime, they do revive Frieza because they promised to. I'm just saying that like Goku and Vegeta just like do not give a fuck
Yeah.
that they're friends with
In Z, it felt like Goku cared about life besides humans.
yeah. Because they're like friends with Beerus the Destroyer, and then they also just like let Frieza come back to life and go back and start his empire. So
Yeah.
like they don't care. They do
Yeah.
not give a shit. That's one of the reasons why people are speculating that Super might still be canon to this. Who knows? But either way, this show takes place just under a year after the Buu saga. It starts with a recap of the Buu saga from the perspective of the villains King Goma and Degasu. They're
I
like
thought it was
watching.
kind of an interesting way to open the show, that it's basically like a clip show
Yeah.
episode, but from through their perspective. So
Hmm.
it keeps it entertaining. It's interesting to see them reacting and like us learning some things through how they react to what's happening.
Yeah, because they're from the demon realm, and they're essentially trying to find out what King Dabura has been up to, why he left to go to the Mortal Realm in the first place. And they find out that he's dead. And they also find out that Majin Buu is dead, because they were concerned that Majin Buu might be a problem, because now that Dabura is dead, King Goma is the guy who, like, is next in line to the throne. I don't know if he's, like, fucking Dabura's son or some shit. Probably not. I feel like they would mention that if that was the case.
Yeah, that's a good question.
No,
Do
no.
we know how much time has passed since the Boo saga?
I think they said 9 months.
What were they doing for 9 months that they didn't bother to check their magic TV that lets them see anything?
Well, it's possible that they just assumed Dabura came back, and then they were like, "Wait a minute, he's actually not back."
Yeah, I guess they could have just been either they thought he came back, or they're just like, oh yeah, he's probably just like doing stuff.
They were
and
like,
then after a while, it's like,
let's check in on him.
with him. Yeah.
Yeah, and then they find out he's fucking dead. He got killed by Majin Buu.
He got jobbed.
Yeah. And then that's when they also learn of the Z Warriors and how powerful the Z Warriors are. And they realize, oh, the Z Warriors might potentially be a threat. And to be honest, that scene kind of confused me a little bit because they were surprised to see that characters on Earth or people on Earth have the ability to use like key moves. And that like kind of confused me a little bit because characters in the Dragon Ball universe have been able to use those kinds of abilities since like long before even Dragon Ball happened. Master Roshi invented the Kamehameha like way before he met Goku, like way before. Yeah. So, I mean, I guess what I'm trying to say is that the information that King Goma and Degasu have on Earth is like way outdated. Like not even just they don't have the information on like Saiyans arriving and shit. Like they don't even know that humans can do that because the Kamehameha was made by Roshi and he's just a regular.
Yeah, I guess it's like they're just working on like a much bigger time scale. They probably just haven't checked in like 1,000 years.
The Dragon Ball world is like pretty magical because like they have like wolfmen. Yeah. Like there's that arc in the martial arts tournament where like a guy is like permanently stuck in his wolf form because Roshi blew up the moon, and then he like uses Krillin's head to like simulate the moon and turn him back into a human, which is pretty funny.
I forgot about that.
So I'm just saying that like the Dragon Ball world has magic, and like they're like acting
also, Coco, it wasn't Master Roshi who blew up the moon. It was Jackie Chun.
True, and it was actually also Jackie Chun who turned Wolfman back into a human.
Yeah, not
Master Roshi. That's like up there with like thinking Sniper King is Usopp. I can't believe I made that mistake. That's crazy. Yeah. So yeah, I'm just saying that like Earth in the Dragon Ball universe is magical. It's not like the normal. It's not like the real world. So I don't know how they got that impression. But nonetheless, that's when they learn that the people from Earth might be a threat to them. I guess what's the lady called? Dr. Arensu. Dr. Arensu is kind of like the one who puts it in King Goma's head that the people from Earth might, for no reason at all, just like come to the demon realm to like fuck shit up.
In fairness, Goku did come to the demon realm that one time.
Yeah.
But it also like, was it not this demon realm? Because Toriyama, I guess, forgot he did that.
See, it's funny that you mentioned that because one of my notes here is I'm still confused because like whatever happened to that one demon king from Baba's palace, and does he have any relation to the demon realm at all? Or is that another one of those forgotten Toriyama concepts?
I guess this was just like some demon guy, and he was like, well, who's gonna check me on that? I'll just say I'm the Demon King.
Yeah, because there's a character in the same arc where Goku like fights his grandpa. He's like a devil king, a King Akuma, I think his name is, or some shit. I guess they just forgot about him because he's like replaced. He's just replaced by Dabura as the guy who's the actual king of the demon realm. Although I will say one thing that's kind of neat is that in one of the Dragon Ball games, they did actually make like a what if story about that, about Dabura and that guy fighting for the throne because they're like, we remember the stuff that Toriyama doesn't, and we're actually gonna like make interesting stories based on that. Which kind of seems to be the general trend with people who contribute to the Dragon Ball series that aren't Toriyama. They like remember shit.
You could say it's a feature, not a bug, because it opens doors for. It's like a blank page inviting the fans to draw on it.
Yeah. Oh yeah, and I guess we learned that the Degasu guy that's like working with King Goma is Supreme Kai's brother. They just sort of casually mention that. I don't know how much it will really matter later on.
I'm sure it'll matter. They're kind of like rivals. Like
Hmm.
The Supreme Kai, he gets like upset when he's like, "Oh, my brother."
Yeah, so there's probably some kind of history there. I mean,
Yeah,
we learned that I mean, kind of similar to Zamasu, the Supreme Kai looking motherfucker who like takes over Goku's body in Super.
Goku
That
Black.
Degasu kind of has a soft hatred towards mortals because he's disgusted by the fact that Supreme Kai would help mortals during the Buu arc. So he's kind of like
Nah,
Zamasu.
what I think he's kind of like a noble elitist type that it's
Yeah,
not that he hates mortals, but he's like, "Ooh, like you're lowering yourself. Like you're
yeah.
helping the peasants, you're dirtying your hands by
I mean,
interacting with them like this."
it is kind of implied that like that particular species of demon is like pretty affluent because like
Oh yeah, cuz he's from the world or
he's from
the
the first demon realm.
yeah,
Like the
and the
that,
other this is later, but the other guy that they're with was like judging him, being like, "Oh, you posh fancy demons."
oh, actually, that brings up because one of the questions you asked while we were watching this was why are the Namekians singled out specifically as Namekians in the demon realm in a way that no other species of demon is? But like Supreme Kai's species is specifically referred to as like glins or something. So I guess they do identify individual races. They're not all just like under the label of
My confusion was like, well, why would they be named after Namek? Because they went to Namek from the demon realm. But then I realized, maybe Namek is named after the race and not the other way around.
well, maybe they came from like a village or something that was called Namek. Then they moved the
Yeah.
planet. Because like they live on another, because Namek got blown up, and then they just went to another planet and they called that Namek. So
Yeah, so they
apparently,
probably just had someplace called Namek in the demon realm.
apparently the Namekians are very familiar with forceful mass migration,
They really can't catch a break.
which is really unfortunate. One thing that I did want to comment on, because they talk about how much more difficult. Oh, yeah, actually, I suppose I should mention in the demon realm, they do have their own set of Dragon Balls, but they're guarded by these things called the Tamagami.
Oh my
Um,
god, it's so cool. All the new lore in this is so juicy and good. It's
mhm,
like, this is actually like the distinction of what bothers me about like super world building versus this.
yeah,
This is the kind of world building that makes the world feel bigger, not smaller.
yeah,
Like, I think a lot of stories, just in general, have this problem that they want to keep adding new stuff, and the new stuff they add, like, it just makes it feel like everything is like too interconnected and small. Versus this is
yeah,
like, it's like, oh, like there's so much stuff going on in this world. Like, it's just hinting at even more.
yeah.
That's what I love about it.
Yeah, because they're like expanding on like the origins of the Namekians and stuff. The Namekians are from the demon realm. Although it kind of feels like it's like a mixture of like coming up with new stuff, but also finding ways to connect it to old concepts like the Supreme Kais.
Yeah, it's a
Like,
really good balance for
yeah,
sure.
yeah, and because there were Namekians in the demon realm, they obviously have their own set of Dragon Balls because the Namekians are the ones who invented them. They did not ship them off um, giant planet-sized Dragon Balls and make
It's like
copies.
the perfect dichotomy because the planet-sized Dragon Balls is really stupid and it like fully explains the Dragon Balls. It's like, well, that's that. Versus the Namekian thing, it's like, well, there's more history to it.
I think what they were going for with the Super Dragon Balls and Super is it's like, oh, they went to Namek and they saw that like the Dragon Balls there are like 2 times the size of the Dragon Balls on Earth, and you get 2 wishes because this was when the Earth Dragon Balls
It's
still only
so,
did
I'm
one.
sorry, it's so stupid.
So they were like, what if we like continually escalated by having there be like Super Dragon Balls
I mean,
that
that's
are
pretty much what Super is in a nutshell. It's just,
planet
they're like,
size?
what if we continually escalate it?
So then we'll get like Dragon Ball Super Z, where they have universe-sized Dragon Balls, and it's like it just keeps on going, you know.
Yeah.
Does it get bigger than a universe? Space-sized Dragon Balls that are like infinite size, and they,
Infinity sized Dragon Balls. I
yes,
love that.
yes. So the Dragon Balls in the Demon Realm are guarded by the Tamagami, and King Goma wants to use the Dragon Balls to get the Eye of Sauron. It's not actually the Eye of Sauron, but I'm just gonna call it that. Um, even though I don't actually know what the Eye of Sauron is because I've never watched. It's Lord of the Rings, right? That's where the Eye of Sauron is from. I think it's Lord of the Rings.
Yes,
Some,
that is Lord of the Rings.
yeah, but they can't use the Demon Realm Dragon Balls because going through the Tamagami to get them would be an absolute hassle. So they want to get the Earth's Dragon Balls because collecting the Earth's Dragon Balls is way easier. And when they said that, they repeat that like multiple times. It kind of just got me thinking about like when Dragon Ball was like about the Dragon Balls and like the Dragon Balls were like actually relatively hard to find and like the series revolved around like actually finding these things.
Well, they're just so OP now that it's just not an obstacle anymore. They have a perfect Dragon Ball radar, and they're also like they could one-shot any being on Earth with them. So
I also find it kind of funny that like because the Dragon Balls are so easy to find for the main characters, they're basically like the only people on Earth who use them.
They have a monopoly on them.
Yeah.
They could end world hunger, but they're like, nah, we gotta use the Dragon Balls to wish whatever bullshit we're wishing for.
They could end world hunger, but Bulma uses them to give herself a BBL, which is or like make herself younger, which is pretty in character for Bulma because she's extremely vain.
Yeah, she is a horrible person.
Yeah. And actually one thing they do kind of say in passing, which I don't know if it's a neat addition or something like really random. Degasu says to King Goma, I don't know if you'll be able to use the Dragon Balls for your wish because the Dragon Balls seem to use white magic, which I guess means good magic, meaning that using it for evil stuff is a thing that you can't do. Which
well, it's true that I don't think you can wish someone dead with them, can you? Like
I don't think something like that was ever really established before. That like the only limitations on the Dragon Balls that existed before was like what's within the power of Shenron.
Yeah, I guess that what they tried to wish like to kill someone before, I think, and it was like, oh, that's outside my power. It was like they wished like Frieza would die or something.
They wanted to use the Dragon Balls to like kill Nappa and Vegeta and stop them from getting to Earth because they were going to use them to bring Goku back to life. And then Bulma was just like, well, why don't we just like use the Dragon Balls to like kill the people coming here, and then we can bring Goku back to life later. And Shenron was like, yeah, I can't do that because I guess they're like way stronger or something.
Maybe Shenron was just making up excuses though.
This was like back when the Dragon Balls had restrictions at all, because this was also back during the time when the Dragon Balls could only be used to bring someone back to life once. So, you know.
The good old days.
When Dragon Ball had stakes, yeah, the good old days. But of course, Degasu or Goma points out that the wishes he wants to make aren't necessarily evil. He just wants to turn the good guys into kids so that they aren't really a threat to him anymore. And he also wants to use it to get the Eye of Sauron, which I feel like you wouldn't be able to do the latter because the Eye of Sauron is an evil thing, isn't it?
Well, but he just wants to bring it back into his possession, though.
Yeah.
So I don't see how that would be black magic because they're not actually doing anything bad. He's just getting back something that is rightfully his.
Yeah. But I also want to point out that like that feature of the Dragon Balls is like totally pointless because that's never really stopped the villains from being able to do evil stuff with them. Like, I mean, I guess it's not inherently evil to like wish yourself to be younger or immortal.
I don't think it's like an intentional limitation. Like we have to stop. It's more just like that's not in the nature of white magic to be able to do those kinds of things.
Yeah. I'm gonna assume that this white magic thing is like one of those things that's like in the Kaizenshu, like if you're an ultra Dragon Ball nerd, read this shit magazines, because this series seems to pull a fair bit from that. Because jumping the gun ahead a little bit, when we're like hanging out with Goku and friends at the party, they're like discussing how Kibito and Supreme Kai defused. Because Potara earring fusion is supposed to be permanent. This is also one of the things that, in my opinion, makes it like an alternate universe from Super, because in Super they established that actually Potara fusion is temporary. It's 30 minutes, but it also depends on like how powerful you are, because if you're like super powerful, it can last a pretty short time. Whereas here, it's established once again that no, it is permanent. And the reason why Vegito defused when he went inside Majin Buu is because Majin Buu has a gas inside him that can defuse people, which was a thing that was in those magazines.
The way they say that makes it sound dumb, but like it makes perfect sense that he would have that power. It is just extrapolating from things we've seen before. It makes sense.
Well,
but saying like, oh, he has a gas inside of him, that doesn't makes it sound like a dumb excuse.
I mean, it's kind of weird because the thing is, in the Buu saga, one of the reasons why Buu was able to like absolutely stomp Gohan in one of the greatest fumbles we've ever seen in Dragon Ball history, was because he absorbed Goten and Trunks. They remained fused for like the entire duration that they were absorbed in Boo's body.
That's okay, but that's why it's dumb to say like, oh, it was the gas inside of him.
Yeah.
But it'd make sense that he'd have power over that because he's like a fusion guy. That's his whole thing.
Oh yeah. I mean, when you look at it from that perspective, that makes sense, yeah. So they decide they're going to use the Dragon Balls to turn everyone into kids so that they're not a threat anymore. Which is really funny, because in the clip show of the Buu saga that they watched, they saw Gotenks fighting Majin Buu and actually giving Majin Buu a run for his money.
Their plan was incredibly stupid.
So I'm not entirely sure why they thought that would work. It would only work if King Goma just thought to turn everyone into babies, and then when Shenron...
Which would have made a lot more sense as a wish.
Yeah.
Because then they just all die.
Yeah, because who's gonna feed? Well,
Yeah.
Well, I mean, the staff remained adults, so I guess the staff would feed them.
Oh yeah, because he didn't do everyone on Earth. He just did Goku and his friends.
I guess he just wished for just the Z Warriors.
Does that mean God also got turned into a baby? And Beerus? I guess not, because he hadn't met them yet. But
well, in this context, since like Beerus and whatever haven't been introduced yet, the closest thing to a god would be Supreme Kai, and Supreme Kai did get turned into a child, so yes.
Well, shit.
There's escalating levels, because like first Kami was god, and that's who Dende is, and then there's like fucking King Kai, then there's like Supreme Kai. So I guess that kind of goes into the escalation thing we were talking about earlier, where they're like, what if there were even higher level gods? Like the god of destruction, and then like the true like ultra, the gaudiest of gods, the one who's like a child or whatever.
But the difference is that the other escalations like weren't like, it was like, oh yeah, he's technically above this person, but none of them were really that big a deal. Like the Supreme Kai, as we've discussed, got his ass beat from his very first fight.
Yeah, the Supreme. Well, it's just really funny because when the Supreme Kai was first introduced, he's like coming in all intimidating to the point where like even Piccolo was like shook by his presence. And then like when he gets into his first fight against Fat Buu, he like completely jobs and gets bodied.
Man, Piccolo kind of like looking really, really bad just by association.
But the funny thing is that wasn't the case with like the gods before Supreme Kai, because like King Kai like taught Goku the Kaioken and the Spirit Bomb, which is what Goku, those are like Goku's rocks in the Saiyan saga and the Namekian saga. And then like fucking Kami was like the one who like trained Goku to be able to fight Piccolo Jr. And he was a pretty competent fighter himself. Like he fought Piccolo Jr. himself. I mean, I don't think he was even close to winning, but he did an okay job. So it's really just Supreme Kai who's just like the most pathetic out of all the gods to ever appear in the Dragon Ball series. Like he just can't do shit. Even in the series where he's like one of the main characters, which is this one. Yeah. So
well, he came along at least on the adventure.
Yeah, he hasn't here
done anything. Well, wait, did he participate in the bar fight that happened in the last episode?
No, he did not. I'm gonna take a shot in the dark here and say that Supreme Kai does not throw hands at all in this entire series. Like I wouldn't
be sad.
I wouldn't be surprised, which is just really funny because they go like out of their way to highlight the fact that he can fight, only to have him not fight. But I mean, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe he'll have like a bit of a showdown with his brother or something. Maybe who knows? But yeah, the first episode ends with them enlisting the aid of this old Namekian guy who's been around in the demon realm for like thousands of years. I'm not even entirely sure how that is possible because I don't think Namekians can live for that long, but because they say in a throwaway line in episode 1, is somehow able to get people's lifespan and I guess pass it on to other people. So I'm assuming that Neva, that's the name of the old Namekian, like is somehow involved with that, and that's how they've been keeping him alive all this time.
I mean, how old is like the really old dude that dies at the start of the Namek saga?
Oh, Guru? I mean, he's pretty fucking old. But I don't think they really specify. But he's like the only Namekian on Namek who's that old. Because there are like other like older Namekian people, but like none of them really come off as like he literally can't walk. Like he's just like permanently stuck on that chair of his. So maybe he's that old. Maybe he used the Dragon Balls to make himself that old, which I don't know if it's necessarily a selfish thing to do, because maybe the Namekians appreciate his guidance.
I mean, if he made the Dragon Balls, like, did he make the Dragon Balls? Is that what happened?
Guru did make the Namekian Dragon Balls, yeah. Because when he died, that they stopped working. So
I guess why he doesn't care that what's the new Demon King's name?
King Goma.
I guess the reason he doesn't care Goma is trying to use the Dragon Balls is just purely because he's senile.
But it's also like really weird because so it's revealed that Neva created. So he's the one who created the Demon Realm's Dragon Balls, and he's also the one who created the Tamagami, the guardians of those Dragon Balls. So he's like willing to like answer to King Goma to like help get Earth's Dragon Balls and like help him get his wish, but he's not willing to tell the Tamagami to just like stand down and let him use his wish there.
Well, in general, he's just kind of a mysterious character. We really don't know what his deal is or any of his motivations. He seemed pretty senile, but then he also did have like a couple moments of like maybe he is a little bit more lucid than he's letting on. So
yeah. Also, as a side note, people pointed out that this Namekian's design is strikingly similar to the design of another elderly Namekian called Monito in the Dragon Ball Super manga, who also made his own set of Dragon Balls. He's the one from the Bardock arc. He's one of the people that Bardock saved, and we got good guy Bardock. And it's like, wait, but Bardock genocides plants for a living. Why is he a good guy and why is he saving these people? But you know, that's whatever. So when they arrive at Earth, Neva summons the Dragon Balls, and he's also able to like awaken them from their yearly slumber. And I wrote down in my notes that this makes the Dragon Balls seem pretty busted, pretty broken. Kind of like last time, because I think I mentioned this in the Social Discharge as well. I realized it doesn't really matter, because the Dragon Balls going into slumber for a year after they're used has never really mattered since, like...
Yeah, they just time skip.
It's never mattered since the original Dragon Ball, because it kind of mattered there, but, like, since Z, it hasn't mattered at all. Like, there was that time in the Namekian saga where they kind of mentioned it, but all they did was just time skip. They're like, oh, we use the Dragon Balls for this wish, time skip, and now we bring the Dragon Balls again, and that's the only time it's ever mattered. So
I don't really mind at all because there's still limitations on it. Like he specifically can't spam it.
Yeah.
And also, like, it's not something just like anyone can do. But although since it's Dragon Ball, like, I wouldn't put it past Toriyama to be like, well, now that he taught the technique to Goku, and Goku can just spam it. But
there's basically, now that such a technique exists, like Dende, because he's the current guardian of Earth and the person who created the new Dragon Balls, they open up the possibility of Dende being able to learn how to do that.
Sure, but still, like, this is a dude who's like thousands of years old, and he made the Dragon Balls. So, like, you could at the same time say, like, well, Dende could learn to make his own set of Dragon Balls, and then they could just have like 10 sets of Dragon Balls. But
Yeah.
obviously he can't, because presumably it's really hard to do.
Well, learning Dragon Ball specifically is not hard to do because all they did was just reconstruct. But I'm assuming you can only make one set per world. But like the way that they did it was like pretty easy. They just reconstructed Kami's dragon, and then and then they had him add some upgrades to the Dragon Balls. Which I guess is not the same as making a set from scratch, to be fair.
Yeah, that's like fixing your computer versus building a whole new computer from scratch.
See, this is why we ignore GT, because in GT, Kami actually did make 2 sets of Dragon Balls, and the whole plot of that show revolves around the fact that Kami was trying to hide those Dragon Balls because when you use them, for some reason, the wish it causes harm to the planet, and like now the planet will like explode if you don't like collect the Dragon Balls in time, and like the Dragon Balls scatter into space. Like, why did Kami design the Dragon Balls to be like that? To blow up the planet and then also make it even harder to get them all together?
That doesn't sound like white magic.
Yeah. So we'll just conveniently ignore that non-canon stuff right there. Although, speaking of the upgrades that Dende made to the Dragon Balls, so when he made the Dragon Balls, which was in the Cell Saga, he upgraded them to have 2 wishes, kind of like the Namekian Dragon Balls, which allow you to have 3. But we learn in this series that Shenron is only willing to grant more than 1 wish to people he actually knows.
Yeah, that kind of just seems like a retcon.
Well, I think in a way it kind of works because like Shenron does like remember people, and like the Z Warriors use the Dragon Balls like more than anyone else. I think they're basically the only people who use the Dragon Balls at this point. So like it makes sense that now that he's become aware of the fact that some people might use them for misdeeds, he might have that, and he knows that the Z Warriors generally tend to use them for good intentions. Like he's like
making yourself look young.
hey man, she's like the face of a company. If she looks young, and hot, people will like invest more, and trickle down economics. That means her employees will get paid more, because there's no way that Bulma engages in wage theft. No way.
She would never.
Well, it's a good thing her dad owns the company.
Yeah. When was the last time we saw Bulma's dad?
That's actually good.
In anything after Dragon Ball?
Well, he is in Z, because he's the one who he's the one who made the ship that Goku goes to Namek with.
Oh.
But that might possibly. Oh no, he also helped remove the bomb from Android 16 in the Cell Saga, which actually kind of ended up being a mistake because he was going to use that to kill Cell and it just wasn't there, and then he got himself killed. So good job, Dr. Briefs. But that might have been the last time we saw Bulma's dad. I'm not entirely sure, which really sucks because that means that we haven't been seeing as much of Bulma's mom, and Bulma's mom is like really hot. So oh wait, they did introduce Bulma's cousin though. That was kind of neat in the Super manga. That's a nice addition, I guess. She comes. They're all scientists or engineers or whatever the fuck you call them.
Oh, I hate that.
Yeah,
it runs in the family. Their genetics are what make them smart.
Well, I guess it's like one of those things where it's like, oh, if you're in a family that's like known for that sort of thing, you have an inclination to get into that sort of thing yourself.
Yeah, I mean, I guess if it's like, oh, it's the family business.
I guess I wrote some notes on like the voice acting since the characters have been shrunk because this is episode 2.
Piccolo,
so yeah.
Why do you sound like that?
Well, first let's start with the good. Stephanie Nadolny is back.
Let's go.
And you know that Crunchyroll knew that people wanted her to be back because like they were like having her show up at conventions, like interviewing like the fucking like director of this show or whatever, and it's like they were putting her all over the place. Like they knew that people wanted her back. I certainly wanted her back. She's one of my favorite voice actors of all time, so much so that I literally watched OKKO just because she was in it. I mean, she doesn't voice KO for the whole series,
She
which
was better than the other voice actor for KO, in my opinion.
I mean, a part of me wants to say that because of my bias, but I also feel like she sounded too old for KO. But she was pretty good in the role, I'd say that.
Yeah.
But yeah, she's back as Goku in this, and I have to say, Crunchyroll, stop trying to sabotage Stephanie Natoli's return. You guys should have done some reshoots, god damn it. For the most part, she sounds fine, but Jesus Christ, it's really showing that it's been a while since she's voiced this character, because, I mean, some of the line reads are...
Honestly, it didn't really bother me. I don't think I would have even really noticed it if you didn't point it out.
I guess my problem is that I'm, like, way too into this voice actor, so I, like, watch stuff from them a lot. So, like, I can tell the difference when it's not happening. Although,
Yeah.
I did say it before that I kind of expected that she might not sound as good as she used to, because when she's asked to, like, do the voice at conventions, it didn't sound as good. But also, a general rule of thumb is you probably shouldn't use, like, on-the-spot performances at conventions to determine, like, the quality of a voice actor, because, like, you'll have, like, that one really bad clip of the Dreamcast era Sonic Adventure. Yeah, where he didn't even sound anything like Sonic, but then he, like, came back for, like, a fan project and he sounded fine, so, you know.
Yeah, it could just be an off day or something.
But it is my opinion that they definitely should have done some retakes. Holy shit. But for the most part, her performance was fine, yeah. Almost indistinguishable from when she did it back in the day. And then you have, actually, she's also not the only original voice actor that came back. They brought back Kid Chi-Chi's voice actor as well, and she sounds pretty much exactly the same too. The only voice that didn't come back that I wish they brought back was Laurie Steele, who is the voice actor for Kid Krillin, because she pretty much sounds exactly like adult Krillin, but, like, as a kid. Although I will say that the new voice actor for Krillin wasn't that bad either. I really like Vegeta Mini's voice, because he sounds exactly, well, sometimes it sounds like a new take, but other times you can tell, like, he was like, how would Chris Sabat say this? And he says it pretty much exactly like how you would expect Chris Sabat to say it. Yeah, it's like, it is, like, spot on. It's like a better, more improved version of, like, what they did back in the day with Kid Vegeta, which is they would literally just have Chris Sabat do his Vegeta voice, and then they would pitch shift it. And there are, like, videos of people, like, removing the filter, and it's extremely cursed. Like, adult Vegeta's voice coming out of Kid Vegeta's mouth. I definitely prefer them going with this direction than what they did in Dragon Ball Z Kai and the flashbacks, where they just cast, like, Kid Trunks' voice actor to voice Kid Vegeta. I don't think that would have fit Vegeta in this at all, so I'm glad they didn't do that. But it seemed like you had some issues with Piccolo's voice, Aarlon.
Don't make me the villain here. We're in agreement on this. Who's the Kid Piccolo voice actor though? Like back in the day, because Kid Piccolo was in Dragon Ball.
Yeah, but that voice was terrible.
I didn't watch the dub of Dragon Ball, so I wouldn't know.
That was like some grown ass man doing, like, some fucking, like, the voice sounded like this, literally,
okay, that's bad.
like literally what I'm doing. Like, it's not even that far off. Like,
but they should think of the memes. They should have gotten him back for the meme.
It sounded like someone was pinching their nose and, like, talking like this.
Like, that's what Kid Piccolo sounded like, and it's just like, Jesus Christ.
But new Kid Piccolo, he's just doing an anime voice.
Yeah,
which I hate.
It's generic, serious, like, well, I want to say Sasuke-esque, but honestly, Sasuke had a pretty distinct voice. He was voiced by Yuri Lowenthal. But, like, that archetype of anime character, you know?
I'm an anime character.
And it is my least favorite voice in this by far, out of all the miniature characters.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it doesn't sound like Piccolo. Like, I just don't get it, because, like, why would Piccolo stop? You know, Piccolo, he's got, like, he does, like, this thing, right? Like, kids can still do that thing.
See, that's the thing, because like when they cast all these voice actors, you can tell that they were directed to try and sound pretty similar to like the people who voice them as adults. And in some ways, it kind of makes like Piccolo and even Goku to some extent stand out in a way, because they're the only ones who aren't really directed to try and sound like their adult selves at all.
Yeah.
Like
Maybe they weren't directed. Maybe that was just like a personal choice on the other voice actors.
probably. But like the person voicing Master Roshi, like they just sound like Master Roshi but younger. Although I'm kind of over here like, why is Master Roshi bald? Because there was that one flashback arc in OG Dragon Ball where Goku went back in time and he had hair. But that is a filler arc, so
But it would make sense and be funny.
yeah.
They should have made him like have hair and it looks like Jackie Chun's hair. And it'd be like a full nod to that.
Also, I didn't realize this was a reference, but someone pointed out that when Krillin becomes mini Krillin, when he's like shocked, he like does a bunch of face expressions, and one of them is like a reference to how his eyes used to be drawn. Because now he's like
Cool.
now he's drawn with like like the whole
They
like.
draw the whites now, don't they? Or wait.
Well,
I
I'm
need to
also
look at a picture of Krillin to remember.
I'm more so referring to the fact that like they draw his eyes kind of like similar to Goku's, where it's like the circle with like the eyeball inside.
Did
Whereas
they
like
draw the whites of Krillin's eyes now?
I think so. Whereas like Kid Krillin's eyes before, he was kind of drawn with like slanted eyes, like it was like lines, like one line, and then like the
No,
eyeball.
they don't draw the whites in his eyes still.
Yeah,
Actually, I see a couple pictures with the whites drawn in it. It's extremely cursed looking.
yeah. So that was a cute little reference because back in the day, Krillin used to be like a sarcastic prick. So he had a face expression more that does look cursed. His eyes were drawn to fit that more, and they did like a bit of a reference there with one of the various face expressions he did. I like that. That was
Yeah.
pretty neat.
I was actually really enjoying the dub for the first couple of episodes. Pretty much, I am generally like a fully anti-dub person. I cannot stand most modern dubs. I think that they're all trying to do the anime voice instead of just voice acting.
Well,
And it's
it's
really
annoying
apparent to
because
me.
it's annoying because like all anime voice actors, they came from like the same area in like fucking Texas, and then
Yeah.
like sometime after that, you get all these YouTube voice actors whose whole thing is basically just trying to recreate those voices. So it's like a self-fulfilling thing, and it's really annoying.
Yeah. So I know like some people aren't bothered by it. It bothers me. But all the young voices where I didn't get that impression from them, except even Piccolo's wasn't really that bad. Like
Hmm.
it wasn't good, but it didn't really bother me per se.
Yeah, it wasn't offensive.
Yeah. And then episode or I guess it was
The end
episode
of episode 2. Are you talking
Yeah.
about Goryo?
Glorio shows up, the demon guy that they go to the demon realm with.
Hmm.
And he is like a standard dub voice
But you
in
know
a
what's
bad way.
You know what's funny about his voice though? It sounds really familiar, but I really can't place
Yeah.
it at all.
Hearing him, I was like, oh, this is like one of the guys that's in like every anime dub. That was my impression.
Yeah, because it really does sound familiar, but I can't place it.
And then like episode 3, we start getting more just like random characters.
Mhm.
And that's when I really started feeling like, oh, I'm watching an anime dub. They're doing the voices, and I'm not liking it.
Which honestly really does bother me, because like the thing about Dragon Ball is that even like by the time like the quality of their dub started to improve, like with the original Dragon Ball, because I might have a soft spot for the original dub of Z, but honestly I can kind of see where people are coming from when they say it's shit. But the original dub of OG Dragon Ball, like the quality on that is pretty good, and the voice acting was still like not generic, like it was still like pretty good. And I feel like Dragon Ball managed to be one of those animes that like managed to avoid like the anime dub trends for like such a long time. And it might be due to the fact that they were just using the same voice actors for like all the roles, but now they're kind of like in a position where they have to like introduce new actors because there's new characters, and you know the miniature characters and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. I hope the industry will recover someday.
Also, the Glorio voice actor has definitely been around as far as anime dubs go, but I do not recognize any of these characters. So it could just be that he just sounds like an anime voice actor.
No, I think he's got a pretty distinct. He sounds to me like I feel sure I've seen him in like Bleach or something and a million other anime.
Yeah, but he's been in a lot of stuff. So the characters go to the lookout, and that's when they learn that Dende has been kidnapped and that King Goma is the one who is responsible for using the Dragon Balls to turn them into kids. And unsurprisingly, this ends up having the effect that King Goma didn't want, which is that now they plan to go to the demon realm. And that's when, as Aarlon mentioned, Glorio shows up and they use his ship to go to the demon realm. And was it then? Oh, no, actually, it was when King Goma was leaving to go to the Border Realm that they learn about that they mentioned the whole Universe 7 thing. But that's when we also learn about like the fact that going to the Demon Realm is split into 3 parts, and traveling between all 3 Demon Realms is heavily restricted for some reason. I'm gonna assume that there's like some lore or backstory stuff there.
There was like a big hole that
Yeah.
used to lead through all the demon realms, but now there's like a big barrier. And the way he described it was not like, oh, they put up a barrier. He was like, oh, this barrier appeared and is now blocking.
Huh. Yeah, I'm sure there's gonna be some kind of explanation for that.
Yeah.
Also, I will say, very amused by the fact that Vegeta tried to get in on this when this is like I said when we were watching it, when this is a remake of Dragon Ball GT, and that stands for Goku. That stands for Goku time, bitch. Get the fuck out of here. Although, from what I have seen, they do actually start to matter. So they won't be as shafted as they were in GT, from what I heard, which is nice.
Yeah, I was kind of wondering because I mean, it almost seemed like they were setting up that they wouldn't be able to come get them because they don't have the pin number to get into the demon realm.
Because like it's like, oh, they have Supreme Kai's ship, but like it doesn't matter if they don't have the pin code to get into the giant goldfish. So the giant goldfish, which is not a goldfish.
Yeah, that's offensive.
Sir Warp.
That's racist against not goldfish.
I mean, technically it was like silver, so it's a silverfish. Also, one thing
Sir Warp, kind of a dick.
Well, when people are constantly traveling in and out of your asshole, I think you go in the mouth and then you come out the asshole. You'd probably be a bit cranky too, to be fair.
That's fair. That's fair.
Also, one thing that I kind of glossed over, I do like the fact that there is a learning curve to the characters getting used to their new bodies in this. It didn't really matter at all in GT that Goku was a kid. I think the extent that it mattered in GT was that he couldn't maintain Super Saiyan 3 as long as he could as an adult, because Super Saiyan 3 like uses a lot of raw power, so it has like a limitation on how long it can maintain the form.
I really liked the detail of him like getting his staff made him like good again, because he hasn't really used the staff since he was a kid, so it makes sense that it would like bring back the muscle memory.
Yeah. It shows the difference between when Toriyama is working on these projects and when he's not, because this is something that's kind of in the Super manga as well, like one of the few differences between the Super manga and the anime. Ultra Instinct, say what you will about it, but it is a form that is about letting your body move without thinking. And like the manga like highlights that like way more, and that's why Master Roshi gets the form, because he understands that more than Goku does as like a seasoned martial artist, and he's the one who like, you know.
Yeah, that's actually one of the few things from Super that I actually really like. I like Ultra Instinct, and I love that Master Roshi gets it.
So
That's
like
sick.
It really shows that like I feel like a lot of other people who work on Dragon Ball, they kind of like forget the martial artist aspect of it.
Mhm.
And like when Toriyama works on it, because like Toriyama's like super inspired by like people like Jackie Chan, like he really liked his movies and shit. And there's even a picture of the two of them together.
Jackie
actually.
Chan. Jackie Chan is a fictional character.
Wait, did I say Chan? I meant to say
Yeah.
Chan. Yeah. So like when you have stuff like Goku considering his reach and stuff now that he's shrunken, and that's why he's like using the power pole and stuff. I like that. That's neat.
Yeah.
Bringing back the technical aspects of the combat in Dragon Ball. That stuff hasn't really mattered ever since the series focused more on being flashy and with the transformations and the super
Yeah.
speed and the fucking cutting back on the budget by just showing the background moving really fast and being like, oh, well, the characters are just moving so fast you can't see them. It's like, shut the fuck up. I know you're saving money, bitch.
But it is cool when they play that sound effect.
Yeah. The choosing,
Yeah.
Yeah. So the guys, Goku, Glorio, and Supreme Kai, that is our trio, finally head off into the demon realm. And they go there, and they find out, well, Goku's surprised to learn that it's actually not that different from Earth, except for the fact that it has a slightly heavier atmosphere and pink skies, which is, kind of neat. I like that. I like the what do you call it? The heavier air thing kind of reminded me a little bit of the what do you call it? When the characters train to use artificial gravity, like in the gravity room where they raise it up to like 10 times Earth gravity or whatever.
Yeah.
And I have to say, the atmosphere of this planet must be pretty fucking heavy if it's actually managing to slow Goku down. Especially considering the fact that this is, well, I mean, I guess he does have a power reduction because he was turned into a kid, but this is Buu Saga Goku. And I think by this point in the series, Goku was now starting to train in like 200 times Earth's gravity. So
what you're saying is if a normal person goes to the demon realm, they will die instantly.
yeah, pretty much. They'll get crushed. It'll be like going to fucking, is it Jupiter? I think it's Jupiter. It'd be like going there. Don't do it.
But then again, Glorio said like it won't hurt you. So I guess it won't hurt you.
Well, I think, was he not referring to like breathing it in specifically? Because like it has like a funny smell and stuff.
Well, maybe no. Yeah, I don't really get it. It doesn't make sense.
But also, it seemed to me like it was implied that only applies to like specific areas. Because like,
yeah, it's from the volcanoes.
Yeah.
There are volcanoes in the sky that release this gas.
And it's also in this scene while they're flying to Demon Realm Mos Eisley that we get some glimpse. I mean, I suppose it was kind of obvious from the very moment Glorio was introduced, but we get a sense that Glorio might be like a little bit sus,
He's being sus from the start.
Yeah.
He works for the other Demon King.
Because we find out that he specifically went to go and get Goku to fight King Goma on behalf of this other king, but like some things aren't quite like adding up in his story, because like Supreme Kai points out that like Glorio is not surprised to see that Goku's already a kid, even though there's no way he would know that. I think in episode 1 we actually see Glorio like listening in on King Goma's plan to use the Dragon Balls, so that's how he knew that.
Yeah, I like the part where they're like asking him about, I forget, he says like, oh, here and there.
Oh, they're asking him. So earlier I mentioned that travel between all 3 demon realms seems to be like super restricted, and Supreme Kai notices that Glorio is from the 3rd demon realm.
So they're asking him like, why is he travel around? And he's like,
he seems
for this and that.
He seems to travel like back and forth. He seems to have access to the first demon world, is kind of like what was going on there. And he's talking about he's like, my work brings me to the first demon world quite often. And then Supreme Kai's like, oh, what kind of work is that? And he's just like, this and that, in the most serious like anime voice. This and that.
That's if someone said that to me, I'd turn around and be like, no.
Yeah,
no, thank you.
He's just extremely sus.
This man is definitely going to murder me.
Yeah. I mean, I'm assuming he's like, I mean, people pointed out that his like design is pretty similar to Han Solo, so maybe he's like involved in like smuggling shit across the realms, because
that would make perfect sense, especially since we talked about before on the seasonal how Toriyama is like apparently super inspired by Star Wars.
Yeah. I mean, this whole series is like very clearly inspired by Star Wars because.
And then I was like, he should write the sequels, and you were like, he should.
I mean, I would love to see that. So much so that someone should. I mean, I would never suggest this because this is extremely unethical. But just imagine a really unethical, morally disgusting person like digging up his body and then getting his brain and then like training an AI on his brain waves and then prompting that AI to write out a full Star Wars trilogy. But we should not do that because that is extremely unethical. Wink, wink to any people who are into grave robbing here. I mean, nah. I mean, that's like really unethical. Do not do that.
For
wink,
all our
wink.
grave robbing fans.
But yeah, Gloriosas. He's. I think it's probably like something to do with smuggling stuff across because his design is. People pointed out that his outfit looks like Han Solo's, but then like the actual design, like his face.
He looks like some game villain or something, right?
Yeah, he looks like a villain from Dragon Ball Xenoverse. And you know, some people also were trying to make the comparison between Dr. Arensu and like the female character that controls that bad guy in Dragon Ball Xenoverse. And people are speculating that maybe Arensu and Glorio are like working together because Arensu very clearly has like her own motives because like
yeah, she's also very sus.
Like she's worried that like King Goma will like take all the funding from like her
King
research.
Goma is very outwardly threatening to do that.
Yeah, so she's probably gonna do some shit and fucking betray King.
I don't know why he would say that because he's just asking to get betrayed.
Oh, and I think Arensu is like Supreme Kai's sister, right? They say that, right? Because Degasu calls her sister. That's like another thing that they kind of just passively mention, which is that Arensu is Supreme Kai's sister. Man, this whole thing really is just like a giant throwback to the old days of Dragon Ball, kicking off a series with randomly introducing a sibling of a main character. Only in this case, they like actually matter instead of like existing as like a one-time villain that's like never brought back ever again. Poor Raditz.
Did Goku and Vegeta just totally indifferent to the fact that their sibling died by their hands?
Yeah, Goku does not give a fuck. Although I suppose the reason why Goku doesn't wish Raditz back is because it'd be like, well, then we'd have to bring back the rest of them, and we'd have to like try to help them overcome like their warrior gene, because like the first thing they'd probably think of is to like rip and pillage the entire planet. So
no, the Saiyans were good guys. They were nice.
No, it was specifically Bardock who overcame his warrior gene. But if you look at Bardock's X-ray, you know that the Kaizenshuu magazines that I mentioned, there's actually a specific section dedicated to Bardock, and they show his X-ray, and they talk about how his skull shape is different from the rest of the Saiyans, and that's why he had enough compassion to overcome his warrior gene and spare Monito and Granola in that one arc in Dragon Ball. No, that's a real page. They actually talk about. No,
oh, you got me for a second. I mean, you know, Japan, they're racist sometimes.
I mean, for what it's worth, I don't think they talk about skull shapes, but the warrior gene is like absolutely a thing with Saiyans. Like they all like fighting. It's like quite literally in their nature. So, after all that, they go to a place that is pretty much exactly like Mos Eisley from Star Wars, and we were kind of getting into it earlier. But this series, very clearly taking a lot of cues from Star Wars. Not the first time Toriyama has done that. The Namek saga was pretty heavily inspired by Star Wars as well.
Yeah.
Frieza.
But it's like good, like he gets the aesthetic. He gets that it's like retro futuristic.
Yeah.
Unlike the sequel trilogy, which forgot that it's retro futuristic.
Yeah.
And just did normal futurism.
Get Toriyama's brainwaves on a sequel trilogy.
Yes.
But yeah, and you get like this whole scene that's like kind of similar or like somewhat inspired by like the cantina scene at the beginning of episode 4.
You did start singing the song.
Yeah. No, every time I see that scene, I just think of and someone should make like an edit of that scene where that's just playing there for no reason.
Yes.
And that's when we get our first like actual fight in the series, which kind of clues us into like the overall direction and vibe that this series is, because Dragon Ball ever since Z is generally more action focused than plot and adventure focused, as we were going over earlier. And the fact that I think that's in episode 3, right? Or is it in episode 2 that cantina fight happens?
It's like at the end of episode 3. It's basically the last thing that happens.
Yeah. So it took us 3 episodes to get like our first action scene, unless you count like the training scene with Goku and Vegeta in episode 1. But like, yeah. And I gotta say, a lot of people on Dragon Ball Twitter would not survive original Dragon Ball, because holy shit, man. The amount of people being like, oh my god, the series is moving so slow. Why are they throwing their fists? And I'm like, holy shit. Guys, do you not understand that this is not that this is basically what original Dragon Ball was like? Now I know I'm not exactly one to talk, because earlier I was talking about how I can
literally cannot watch.
I can barely watch original Dragon Ball because my attention span has gotten so bad ever since I discovered Discord. But you know what? In spite of that, I still recognize original Dragon Ball for the peak fiction that it is.
No,
And,
it's boring unless you loop like 5 frames of them punching in different positions.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's peak Dragon Ball right there. When you loop the same animations over and over, and when you move the background, when you just move the background with no characters on it, because the characters are moving really fast. Oh, and don't forget the characters like standing there and like with their eyes closed, with them looking like they're constipated because they're like sensing the power levels of the characters fighting. Because yeah, that's peak Dragon Ball right there. The constipation, the looping. Yeah, I hate Dragon Ball fans. Now, in all fairness, I haven't seen the rest of the show yet, so it could very well be that in spite of the more adventure plot focused direction, maybe it still doesn't have very much to offer. Because I will say, even though I prefer the adventure direction, when you compare Dragon Ball to something like One Piece, one of the most obvious things is the fact that most of the locations that Goku goes to aren't really that interesting. So like, I mean, the story being told, like whatever's actually happening there, but like the locations themselves are like kind of boring.
Yeah.
So
Namek is more interesting than anything that's in OG Dragon Ball, really.
And that's saying a lot, because
I guess there's like Kami's Lookout. Kami's Lookout is kind of interesting.
That's saying a lot because Namek was pretty boring. Yeah, that's true. That's when they introduced like the hyperbolic time chamber.
Yeah.
And I mean, Korin's tower was pretty interesting as well, because that had like the sacred water and like that whole thing where Goku had to go into that cave and get the water and stuff. So some of the locations are interesting, but generally,
mostly not.
Yeah, generally it's just a place for Goku to go and do a thing. So it's very possible that could end up being the case with like the demon. I really hope not. That could end up being the case with the demon realm, and maybe that's why people don't really care that much for like the adventure, more plot focused aspect. So I guess we'll have to wait and see.
I mean, I will say my first impression is pretty positive, because I like that it's basically like a road trip anime.
Yeah.
They're going on a road trip through the demon realm, and they have a clear objective. They're trying to go get Dende back.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like it feels like a more like refined, polished, streamlined OG Dragon Ball.
But like in a good way, not like Dragon Ball Path to Power.
Yes, in a good way. Not like they took the soul out of it. Like, it has the soul, but they made it more accessible.
Mm-hmm.
They've got a really good setup here to show us a lot of interesting places, and it feels like that's where they're going with it. So I certainly hope the next 20 episodes or whatever aren't just in the same pink sky
I mean,
area.
I'm assuming we're gonna get to like explore like all three parts of the demon realm, and
Yeah,
like
exactly.
the
So that
first
sounds interesting.
the first or like the level 1 part will be like where the final conflict with King Goma happens, and I'm like hoping that each realm will have like some interesting lore behind it and like some interesting characters to go with it. I'm basically, and I feel like I'm kind of, oh, maybe my expectations might be a little bit high here. I'm basically expecting it to be like a shorter version of how a One Piece arc is written. I don't know if that's expecting too much. Maybe. I don't know. What do you think? Is that expecting too much?
I don't think it's expecting too much. I mean, we might not get it, but
Yeah.
I think that's fair.
Yeah. And I guess, yeah, that's more or less where the episode ends,
We end on that sick ass cliffhanger though.
where their ship is stolen.
Yeah, their ship got stolen and there's an app with a note on it.
And I believe you were trying to decipher that. Were you successful?
Well, I mean, it was kana. I think it was real Japanese, but I mean, I didn't know what the words meant, but I
Mhm.
did read them.
Also, just to quickly say, I really appreciate whenever combat like it was a short fight, so we have yet to see the best of what Daima has to offer. I watched pretty far when I watched the sub, but I won't say much about that. But I will say I really appreciate when combat in Dragon Ball is grounded. The choreography is just way better. And can I just say, it really this is gonna sound kind of insulting to like maybe Toriyama or like the people who wrote and directed this, because I don't really know like how involved Toriyama is in like choreographing the fights or whatever. It feels like they did that thing where they actually like looked up how to write a fight scene. And I say that specifically because one of the things that they always say in almost every tutorial that I've looked up on how to write a fight scene is have the characters make use of the environment around them to make the fighting more interesting. So you have like Goku using his plates and shit, and like
Yeah.
yeah, it's way more interesting than characters just flying through rocks and stuff in like
You
an
know,
open
a
background.
little bit ironic that Toriyama should age Goku up because it was too hard to choreograph the fight scenes with his
Oh
short
yeah,
arms,
I wanted
and
to
now
mention
we've
that.
gone
Yeah,
back.
it is kind of ironic that that the moment they shrink Goku down, the combat is better choreographed. I mean, I don't wanna say that too much because like when you watch stuff like Dragon Ball Super Broly, I mean the choreography was pretty good in that too. And it's not like the choreography in Z was always just like flashy, high-speed antics. Like
Yeah.
you have like Goku versus Cell, or like Goku versus Majin Vegeta, or like there's like some pretty interesting creative parts in the combat in Goku versus Frieza. So the fights had interesting moments here and there. To be honest, I'm probably gonna assume that most of the issues I have with the way combat is portrayed in Dragon Ball is mainly an anime problem, and if I read the manga, the problems wouldn't be as prevalent, I think. But I've only read up to the King Piccolo saga in the manga, so not counting when I read Super, so I can't say. But it remains to be seen. But yeah,
Right.
the third episode ends with their ship getting stolen, and I I guess that kind of sets the stage for how the show is going to be from here on out, because now they can't just like go to where they want to go. They have to go it on foot. So hopefully it'll be like what I was saying, where they come across various different interesting locations as they
Should
slowly
have
but
brought the
surely.
Nimbus.
I one of the questions I wanted to ask is the Nimbus restricted by such limitations as needing a pin number to go to where it's going? Couldn't Goku just be like Nimbus and the Nimbus could appear? Possibly, potentially. I mean, the Nimbus can go to the afterlife, can't it? I think it can. Like it can
Yeah.
go to, so maybe it can go to the demon realm. Possibly, who knows? I don't know. I mean, it would have been kind of cool, but I feel like they were like, nah, that's leaning too hard into the nostalgia. Let's not do
Yeah.
that because they
Yeah, it
do.
did seem pretty intentional the way they brought up the Nimbus, and Goku was like, nah.
Yeah, which is funny because this takes place not too long after the Buu saga, and in the Buu saga, or I guess more specifically the Gohan high school arc, Gohan does use the Nimbus. and he can also fly. So, Goku could have used it if he wanted to. Oh, actually, they brought it back in the Goten High School arc as well in the Super manga. See, that felt way too much like they're trying to make it like the Gohan one. They're like, oh look, Goten's riding Nimbus like Gohan did in his high school arc. But anyways, that's it for now.
Yep.
Yeah. Got anywhere where they can find you, Aarlon?
I've got a comic at BigBilly'sAdventureEverywhere.xyz.
Mm-hmm.
I have a Blue Sky now. It's just Aarlon at Blue Sky.
And you can also find me. You can find me on Blue Sky. Do I even really care to shout out my Twitter anymore? Not really.
Yeah, I almost did. I was like, that's too much work.
You can find me on Blue Sky at Tamika Draws. You can find me at Tamika Draws pretty much everywhere. Well, anyways, I have a fucking link tree. I'll put that in the description.
It's in the description.
Yeah, so thanks for watching, and we'll see you guys in the next 3 weeks. Bye-bye.